Let's speak transparently to all of the changes that are now happening to professional degrees and specifically speaking on graduate funding. If you did not know, the past couple months and also now the past couple days, there's so many changes on what is a professional degree, and why that is important is to understand what gets funded and what doesn't get funded. I'm going to use myself for example. I hold a master's in teaching that is a professional degree. I did not pay for that degree. It was completely funded through the charter school in which I was working at the time and AmeriCorps. I went to teachers college. I went to a private teachers college. If I had to foot that bill, it would be over $100,000. The only reason I am here today as a researcher, as an educator, as an academic, especially pursuing my doctorate degree, is because of my experience within teaching, and before that, my experience within agriculture, veterinary science, animal science, plant science, land management, all of that. These conversations are so important for us to have because the demand of nursing is not going away. The demand of teaching is not going away. The demand of physicians is not going away. If we look at this from a labor statistics perspective, each of these pillars on what is a profession, I guess I could say, is in a shortage. We have a shortage of physicians. We have a shortage of teachers. We have a shortage of nurses, not only nationally, but internationally. And so once you remove access to funding, and I want to be very specific, the funding is not like scholarships, it's literally loans. So these professionals are willing to take out the $100,000, the $200,000 if you're a doctor, depending on your specialty, upwards $500,000 in loans to do the service of community in whatever way, whether it's scientific or whether it's through the lens of education or through the lens of caregiving like nursing. So it's not like a handout, in which I feel like media is trying to frame it as, but it is going to create catastrophic effects because we're already in a a teaching shortage. And so imagine you remove those teaching programs, which is already being done, right? The pathway that I took to become a teacher does not exist within the same capacity that it did in 2020. And it's very important for me to name and say that. And so, again, we're talking about accessibility and the barriers of entry becoming even more rigorous, and the pathway in which I took may not be available or exist in the same capacity for those who are coming behind me. And we hear this tale where it's like, back in my day, that's not how we did it. We had these programs in the school. We had home ec. We had welding. We had all of these things where now those things are becoming privatized or deemed as a luxury. And I also want to name and say, I know the media, rightfully so, is covering what is happening to nursing professions, but I also want to pull everybody's attention to all of the other professions that are on the chopping block for the funding being cut. Because it's all of those professions that literally keep a republic, a society going, living and breathing and educating and functioning. So what happens when you're going to have a huge part of the workforce aging out in terms of they're up for retirement? And then also you have the entry workforce yearning and wanting to do the work, wanting to do the service, but it is now becoming inaccessible. And these are the conversations that we have to have. We have to speak about post-secondary pathways. And when I say post-secondary, I'm not solely just focusing on university. I'm not just solely focusing on college, but post-secondary also includes trade schools. A lot of trade schools are going to lose their accreditations. lose their funding. A lot of adult education and literacy, the people that maybe they didn't go to a high school that had the proper infrastructure or curriculum, and so they're leveraging their local government because there are different nonprofits that receive funding through adult education and adult literacy and all these programs. They also lost funding. I remember when I was at Penn State this summer conducting research and working with some of my colleagues, it's going to be about 23,000 nonprofits that lose funding. And so we have to genuinely think about the ripple effect that is happening. It's not that people don't want to do the work. It's not that people haven't historically been doing the work. What happens when funding gets cut? And also when we're thinking about the Grad Plus loan as it exists, because most graduate students, unless you're coming from extremely affluent backgrounds or you're paying directly out of pocket, use the Grad Plus loan. And that structure is going to change come July 1st, 2026. And also, let's keep in mind, most of the professions and occupations in which you need that have pathways to sustainability is now requiring a graduate degree. These conversations are so important to have because it literally affects you, and I will continue to say that in the same capacity that I will continue to share resources. But I urge you to not let anybody trick you out of your spot of educating yourself, because when we think about the barriers to financial stability, educating yourself is the telltale way.